The wind came off the downs at Marl Cross and smelled of chalk and cold iron. It was the last hour of an October afternoon, and the light had gone the color of weak tea. Eloan Cade stood where the four roads met, a hand on the weathered finger-post, and listened to the day empty itself out around her. She had walked 3 miles from Witchcombe with a sack of windfall apples, traded them at the mill for flour, and now carried the flour the same 3 miles home. Her shoulders ached, and she did not mind the ache. It was honest, and it was hers, and it belonged to no one she owed. The Crossroads was a lonely place. Travelers passed through and did not stop. The gorse had gone brown along the banks. A pair of rooks turned slow circles above the beach hanger, their voices carrying the way sound carries when there is nothing else to fill the air. Eloan set the flour down against the post and pushed a loose strand of dark hair from her eyes. She was 19 years old, and she was alone, and she preferred it that way. Her mother said a girl ought to fear an empty road. Eloan had never learned the trick of it. She had a healthy fear of most things she could see coming. It was the things she could not see coming that she should have feared. Then she heard it. Far off down the eastern lane, coming fast, and everything in the sound of it was wrong. The noise climbed out of the east, hooves, too many of them, and too fast, and beneath the hooves the hard rattle of iron tires on a road that had no give in it. Eloan straightened from the finger-post. Down the long white lane from Ashbourne a coach was coming, and it was coming wrong. It was a traveling chaise, dark and heavy, drawn by 4 horses. The driver's box was empty. Far back up the lane, a crumpled shape lay where it had been thrown. The reins had come down over the splinter bar and whipped along the ground between the wheels, and the horses had the bits gripped in their teeth and the whites of their eyes showing, and they ran the way horses run only when terror has taken the place of sense. Eloan understood the road in a way no traveler could. She had walked it 1,000 times. She knew that 40 yards past the crossroads the west lane fell away without a wall, down into the old chalk pit the parish had never fenced, a drop of 30 feet onto broken stone. The horses did not know it. They were aimed straight at it, and would carry the coach and everyone in it over the edge. At the window of the chaise, small and white, and pressed to the glass, was a child's face. Eloan did not stop to weigh whether she could do this. There was no time in which to hold the thought. She stepped down off the verge into the middle of the road. Not in front of them. In front of them was death, and she knew it. She had once watched a man go under a brewer's dray at the Michaelmas fair, and she carried the picture of it still. So she ran along the near side instead, downhill, letting the team come on to her, matching the one thing she was able to match, which was their line. Her father had been a horse coper before the bad years took the trade from him, and he had put her up on green colts before she could properly walk, and he had taught her the single truth that governs all dealings with a frightened horse. You cannot fight its strength, you can only borrow its direction. She had 100 guineas of terrified horseflesh bearing down on her, and the strength of one tired girl, and she meant to spend that strength on direction alone. The leaders came abreast of her in a wall of heat and breath and thunder. She saw the froth ropes on the near one's neck, the great rolling eye. She gathered herself and lunged and caught the cheek strap of its headstall in both her hands. The horse flung its head to throw her off. Her feet left the ground. The chalk road rushed up and tore the toes from her boots and skinned her knees, and then loosed her again as the animal threw her weight upward. Her arms felt as though they would be dragged from their sockets. She did not let go. "Ho, now," she said. She did not shout it. Shouting was the trade of people who did not know horses. She set her voice down low against the creature's ear, underneath the panic, the way her father had shown her in the yard on winter mornings, a lifetime ago. "Ho, how now I have you!" "Easy, I have you." She got the toe of one ruined boot up onto the shaft. She hauled not backward, for she had not the weight in her to stop 4 horses by pulling. No living soul had. but sideways, dragging the leaders' heads over toward the high right-hand bank where the old gorse grew thick and tangled and cruel. The near leader felt the bank loom and shied from it and checked. The others ran up against him. Behind them, the great chaise slewed across the road with a shriek of iron. Elowen heard the child scream inside it, and felt the whole black weight of the thing begin to swing, and for one long moment the coach rose up onto two wheels and hung there against the pale sky, tall as a house, deciding whether to fall. It did not fall. It came down again onto four wheels, with a crash she felt in the roots of her teeth. A wheel struck the stone mile marker, and the marker broke clean in two. The team plunged half into the gorse, and the gorse caught at the traces and the harness and their own plunging legs, and they balled together in a heap of muscle and leather, and they slowed, and they stopped. They stopped. For a moment there was no sound in all the world, but four horses blowing hard and something broken, turning slowly, tick by tick, under the coach. Elowen hung off the near leader's head with the whole of her weight, her cheek laid against its cheek, her chest heaving like a bellows. Chalk dust and horse sweat filled her mouth. Her palms had come open on the strap, raw and wet, and she could feel them wet and warm against the cold evening. "There," she breathed. "There. Now. It is done. It is over. It is done." The horse shuddered the whole length of its body under her hands. Its ears came back to her, first one and then the other. She felt the terror go out of it slowly, the way a fever breaks. She loosed her grip, a finger at a time, until the animal stood quiet on its own. Then she turned, and on legs that had begun to shake beneath her, she went to the door of the coach. The door of the chaise hung open on a single twisted hinge. Inside, in a wreck of spilled cushions and a burst traveling case, two people had been flung together into the forward corner. One was a child, a girl of no more than 7, in a wool coat far finer than any Elowen had put on a child's back. Her bonnet was gone, her fair hair loose, and she stared at nothing with the blank, held-breath stillness of a creature too frightened even to weep. The other was a man. He had fallen half across the child, and Elowen understood at once that he had thrown himself over her on purpose, made a wall of his body between the girl and the flying sides of the coach. He was not moving now. A long, dark cut ran above his temple where his head had met the frame, and a dark trickle had crept down into his collar. "Come to me," Elowen said to the girl, low and level as she had spoken to the horse. "Come now. You are safe. Give me your 2 hands." The child looked at her a moment. Then she lifted her arms, and Elowen drew her out through the broken door and set her on the grass, and the girl's arms went round her neck and would not be moved. "I have you," Elowen murmured. "There." "What are you called, Sorrel?" the child whispered into her shoulder. "Sorrel, that is a fine name." "A green and growing name." She smoothed the small shaking back. "Is that your papa, in the coach?" The word came out thin as thread. "Is he dead? Please, please. Is my papa dead?" Elowen set the child gently down and went back to the man. She laid 2 fingers to his throat below the jaw, as she would to a foal cast down in the straw, and found the pulse there, slow but even and sure. "No," she said, and she turned so the girl might see her face when she said it, because a child knows a soft lie the instant it is told. "No, he is not dead. He is knocked senseless. That is all, and his head is cut. He will wake." She eased the man back, laid him straight, and pressed her balled-up neckerchief to the cut to stem it. And it was then, with his hand fallen open on the floor of the coach, that she saw the ring. It was gold, worn thin at the band, set with a dark stone cut with a device, a leaping heart beneath a single star. Elowen did not know it. She knew only that such a ring was worth more than the Cade farm and all it held, that the coat was silk-lined, and that the 4 horses in the traces were blood-bred hunters worth 100 guineas at Ashbourne Fair. None of it moved her. She had a cut man, a terrified child, and a road going fast to dark. Whose they were could keep, that they lived could not. Up the lane she found the driver where the road had flung him, alive, his leg bent wrong below the knee. She bound it with a splintered baton and his own scarf. A carter bound late for Whitcomb came upon them in the last gray light, took the driver onto his load of hurdles, and helped her cut a sound horse free, and laid the senseless man across its back. Elowen walked at that horse's head the whole 3 miles home, through the falling dark, the child Sorrel's cold hand held fast in her own, and not once in all that road did she let it go. Her mother came into the yard with a lamp when she heard them at the gate. Her father came behind, wiping his hands on a cloth. He reached up to help the stranger down, and then his hands went still upon the man's fine coat, and he stood in the yellow lamplight without moving, staring down at the worn gold ring on the fallen hand. "What is it?" her mother said. "Thomas, what ails you?" Her father did not answer at once. He turned the man's slack hand toward the lamp so the dark stone caught the light. "A heart," he said very low, "leaping, and a star set above it." He laid the hand down again as though it had grown hot in his. "That is the badge of Vielle. This is the Duke of Vielle himself." The name dropped into the yard and lay there in the lamplight, and for a moment no one moved. Elowen stood at the horse's head with Sorrel's small hand still in her own, and felt the cold come up through the soles of her boots and into her chest. The Duke of Vielle. She had never once set eyes on the man in her life, never stood in a room with him nor heard his voice. And yet she knew that name better than her own uncle's, because 5 months ago a letter had come to this house sealed, with that same leaping heart in red wax, and it had carried an offer, and she had refused it. The man across the horse's back stirred and moaned and did not wake. "Bring him in," Elowen said, her voice held steady, though the rest of her had begun to shake now. "Into the fire, and the child with him. Whatever else he may be, tonight he is a hurt man and a frightened girl under our roof, and they will come in and be warm." Her father looked at her a long moment across the lamp. He was a man who had shouted the rafters down in this yard not 5 months since. He did not shout now. He had understood, before any of them, exactly whose weight he had just lifted down from that horse. They carried him in and laid him along the settle by the fire, and while her mother set water to heat and tore clean linen into strips, Elowen sat down in the low chair with the sleeping child heavy in her lap and let herself think for the first time about the letter. It had come in the spring, on a mean afternoon of thin rain. A groom in a livery she did not know had brought it to the door and sat his horse in the wet, waiting while her father broke the red seal, stamped, she saw only now with that same leaping heart. Her father's hands had shaken then too, though for a different cause. The letter was an offer of marriage. It was courteous. It was also as cold as well water, and it did not trouble itself to pretend otherwise. The Duke of Vielle was a widower of some 2 years' standing. He had 1 child, a small daughter, and no wife to order his household or raise the girl as a girl of that house must be raised. He wished, therefore, to marry again. He did not, the letter said plainly, come to the matter with any warmth of feeling, nor did he ask any of her. He offered a plain and honorable arrangement, and he supposed her sensible enough to see the good sense in it. Her name, it seemed, had been put before him by an aunt of Elowen's, who had years ago kept house at Vale Court, and who remembered the Cades as respectable, God-fearing, and poor. And they were poor. That was the barb hidden inside the bait, and her father had felt it go in at once. The horse trade had died in the bad years, and left its debts behind it like fallen timber across a lane. The lease on the farm hung by a single thread in the fist of a landlord who wanted them gone from it. The settlement named in the Duke's letter would have cleared every debt to the last farthing, bought the lease outright into their own keeping, and left her mother easy and warm for the rest of her days. Elowen had read the letter through twice, and then she had said no. She had said it quietly. She had said it once. She did not weep, and she did not raise her voice. She said, "I will not marry a man who has weighed me in a ledger and never once troubled to learn my face. He does not want a wife. He wants a governess. He need not pay, and a mother bought cheap for a motherless child. A thing that begins as a bargain, ends as one. I would sooner be poor and my own than rich in a single line entered in another man's accounts." Her father had shouted the house down about her ears, naming every debt aloud in the lease, and her mother's age. Her mother wept for 2 days and begged her to think what she threw away. Lowen went up to her narrow room under the eaves and shut the door, and did not open it for the better part of 2 days. And when she came down at last, she took up her life again, as though nothing had passed. Her father had written out the refusal in his slow, careful hand. The strange groom had come a second time and carried it away, and from that day no one under that roof had spoken of it again. The debts had gone on quietly growing all the same. The lease still hung by its thread. And now the man who had written that cold spring letter lay bleeding upon her mother's settle, and his small daughter slept warm in her arms, and neither of them knew yet whose roof it was that had taken them in out of the dark. Her father wanted them gone that night. He said it low, in the scullery where the words would not carry to the fire. "Elowen, do you know whose head that is you are bathing? That is a duke. If he wakes in a laborer's cottage and takes it into his mind that we meant him harm, or thought to hold him for ransom, he can break this family with a word. Send to Vale Court now. Let them fetch him away tonight." "He cannot be moved tonight," Elowen said. "Elowen, his head is cut deep, and he is not truly woken. I have seen a man take a blow like that, seem to mend, and be dead, by morning of the bleeding within. Put him in a jolting carriage tonight, over these roads in the dark, and if he dies, it will not be Vale's grief alone, it will be our doing." She wrung the cloth out over the basin. "He stays until first light. I will not put a man in his grave to spare us his temper." Her father held her eyes a long while. It was the same voice she had used 5 months before, when she had said no and had meant it to the bone, and he had learned the weight of that voice the hard way. He said no more. Her mother had word carried to the great house. That same hour by the drover's boy who slept in their barn, a short line no more. The gentleman hurt on the Ashbourne road is living and safe at Cade's farm above Witchcombe. His young daughter is unharmed and sleeping. Send a surgeon and a carriage at first light. Elowen would not let her name be put to it. She wanted nothing at all from Vile Court, and least of all its notice. Then the house went quiet, and Elowen kept the watch alone. Her mother slept upright in the chair. The child Sorrel had been coaxed at last into the box bed, and lay with her thumb near her mouth, twitching now and again like a dreaming pup. Elowen drew the low chair close to the settle, fed the fire, and watched the stranger breathe. It was a strange office, to sit out the small hours guarding the life of a man who had once reckoned her worth in pounds and sent the sum by another's hand. She looked at his face in the firelight, stern and dark even in senselessness, and felt no anger toward it, and no triumph either, only the plain, stubborn thing she always felt before a hurt creature, that it must be kept alive if the keeping lay in her power. He woke a little before dawn. It came all at once. His eyes opened, gray and clouded with pain, and his hand went out, not to his broken head but outward, searching the dark, and his cracked voice said one word, "Sorrel." "She is safe," Elowen said at once, low the voice she had laid on the horse. She put her hand over his groping one and pressed it back to the blanket. "She is safe and whole and sleeping, not 4 feet from you. She has not a mark on her. Be still now, sir. If you rise, you will open your head afresh. Prot." He turned toward the sound of her, and tried to make sense of the room. The smoke-dark beams, the tallow dip, the earthen floor, the plain, hard face bent above him, and failed, and tried again. "Where?" he began. "You are at Cade's farm above Witchcombe, 3 miles from Marl Cross. Your coach came down the Ashbourne Road with no driver, and the horses bolting blind for the old chalk pit which is fenced by nothing. You would have gone over, you and the child both, 30 feet onto stone. She told it plainly, for she had learned that plain truth steadied frightened things better than kindness did. You were brought up short. Your head struck the frame. Your girl is not hurt at all, and your driver has a broken leg and will keep it. That is the whole of it. He lay quiet, taking it in. His eyes moved from her face to the box bed, found the small, fair head on the bolster, and something passed across his hard features that she looked away from, because it seemed a thing not meant to be seen. "Who brought us up short?" he said at length. It was not truly a question. 4 horses bolting. A grown man could not have turned them. Who did it? "It does not signify," said Eloan. "It signifies to me." She was silent a moment. Then, because he would plainly have it out of someone by daylight in any case, she said, "I did." He looked at her then, truly looked for the first time, taking in the ruined boots by the hearth, the bandaged palms in her lap, the mud dried along the hem of her one good gown. She watched him weigh what she had said against the mere size of her, find the two would not agree, and believe her notwithstanding. "Your name," he said. "That does not signify either. Girl, everything of this night signifies to me." "I will have your name, Eloan," she said. "Eloan Cade. This is my father's farm." And she watched the name go into him and strike something deep. She saw it happen. She saw the gray eyes change, saw the cloud of pain burn off them and leave them clear and cold and fixed upon her face. He knew the name. Of course he knew it. He had set his hand to a letter addressed to it in the spring, and had a refusal back such as no duke in the county would have credited, had it not come sealed and plain in a farmer's careful hand. "Cade," he said very quietly. "Of Whitcomb. Yes, you are the girl who refused me." "Yes," said Eloan. She did not look away from him. "I am." The fire ticked in the grate. Beyond the walls a cock woke too early and thought better of it. The Duke of Vale lay on a laborer's settle, his head bound in a farm girl's torn linen, and looked at the girl who had first refused his hand, and then, knowing nothing of who he was, hauled him back from the edge of a pit, and for a long moment he said nothing. When he spoke again, his voice had altered. It had gone careful. "Then I am twice in your debt tonight," he said, "and doubly a stranger to you, Miss Cade. I do not let a debt stand unpaid. My steward comes at first light. Name me a sum, a true sum, not a modest one, and it will be counted to your father before the week is gone. The lease upon this farm is held against you. I think that can be lifted by noon if you wish it. You have only to say the word." "No," said Eloan. "You have not yet heard the figure. I do not want the figure." She rose, set the basin aside, and stood over him with her bandaged hands loose at her sides. "Hear me, sir, for I will say it once, and not again. I did not run in among your horses to be paid for it. I would have done the same for a tinker's child. There is no sum in your steward's book for the thing I did, because it was not done for a sum. And if you send one to this door, I will send it back by the same wheels that brought it. You will pay me nothing. You will lift no lease on my account. You will not buy yourself clear of owing a debt to a farmer's daughter. That I think is the one thing in the world you can least afford to do to me twice." He was silent. "If you must do a thing," she went on more evenly, "do it for the man flung off your box. His leg is broken in your service, driving your horses down your road. See it properly set. Keep him in full wage while it mends, and do not turn him off at the end, because he can no longer sit a box that is a debt worth paying. Pay that one, and leave mine be." The Duke looked at her for a long time out of those clear gray eyes, and did not answer her, and did not agree, and did not refuse. But she saw the words go in and lodge, and stay. The surgeon came at first light, the steward close behind, and after them a valet and 2 grooms, and of a sudden the small dark farmhouse was full to its beams with Vale Court, and the quiet of the night was gone. The Duke would not be carried. He rose white to the lips and stood by his own will, and let the surgeon do no more than bind the wound afresh. Sorel woke to the noise, and would not go to the valet, nor the grave steward, nor even at first her own father. She went to Aloan, took 2 fistfuls of her skirt and pushed her face into it, and had to be gentled free, finger by finger, as Aloan had gentled the shaking horse. "You will come," the child said, fierce and wet-cheeked. "Say you will come and see me, Papa. Make her say that she will come." "Hush now, little one," Aloan murmured over the fair head. "You are going home to your own warm bed where you belong. Be brave for me. Now." The Duke stood in the low doorway with his hat in his hand, a thing she dimly understood that dukes did not do at a farmer's door. He looked back once into the room. His glance went over the settle where he had lain, the fire she had tended all night, and came to rest at last upon her face. "Miss Cade," he said, "Your Grace—" He seemed on the point of saying something further. Whatever it was, he weighed it, and set it down unspoken. He inclined his head to her. Not a bow, for a duke does not bow to a farmer, but more than her station had any right to ask, and went out to the carriage with his daughter against his chest. Aloan stood in the doorway and watched the 2 black carriages turn out of the yard and take the Ashbourne road until the sound of the wheels had worn away to nothing, and the ordinary noises of the morning came creeping back. A cock, a dog, the wind in the bare thorn by the gate. Then she found she was gripping the doorframe very hard, that her bandaged hands had begun to hurt in earnest, and that she was, for no reason she could have named aloud, very near to weeping. She told herself it was only the long night, and the fright of the road catching her up at last. She very nearly believed it. She went in to see to the fire, and she did not let herself think about the way he had looked back from the door, as though he had left some small thing of his own behind him in the room, and did not know how a man in his position might ask to have it returned. For 3 days Aloan kept to the house. Her palms were slow to heal where the headstrap had bitten them raw, and her mother would not let her lift so much as a full pail. She sat by the window with her hands bound and shelled the last of the beans, and watched the lane word of the thing had gone out through the parish the way word always went, faster than any horse. By the 2nd day, it was told in Wychcombe that the Duke of Vale's coach had come to grief on the Ashbourne road, and that it was a Cade girl who had turned the horses and dragged his Grace and the little lady both back from the very mouth of the chalk pit. Some told it near the truth, some told it very wide of it. 2 women walked out from the village on purpose to look at the farm, and went away again disappointed that there was nothing to see but a farm. Aloan let it wash over her and past her. She thought less about the Duke than about the child, about the small fists knotted in her skirt, and the wet face and the fierce cracked voice saying, "You will come." She had not answered the child. She had not known how to answer. On the 4th day, a letter came. It was carried by a groom on a good horse, written on heavy paper, and it bore no red wax and no leaping heart, nothing, she understood, that might shame a poor house before its neighbors by announcing whence it came. She knew the hand the moment she unfolded it. She had seen it once before in the spring, at the foot of a letter she had sent back unanswered. She read it standing in the yard. "Miss Cade, my daughter asks for you each morning when she wakes, and each night before. She will consent to sleep. She is not a child who asks for things, and I do not know how to teach her to stop. I will not pretend this is a small matter to her, for it is not. Will you come and see her? Name any day, and my carriage will be at your gate by 9. If you would rather not come, tell me so plainly, and I will trouble you no further, and I will find some other way to comfort her that does not lean upon your goodness." Vale, that was the entire letter. No mention of money. No mention of the spring, or of the debt, or of any bargain. No hint that she was expected to be anything at all, but a kindness to a lonely child. She took the letter in to her mother, who read it twice, holding it at arm's length to see the words, and then laid it in her lap. "You will go," her mother said. I know. He asks nothing but the visit. You see that? I see it. Her mother was quiet a moment. She had wept 2 days in the spring over a refused fortune. She looked at her daughter now with something else in her face, something that had grown there, slowly across 5 months, and that Eloan had not marked until this moment. Do you know why he asks it so? She said. A duke, and he writes to a farm as though begging a favor he has no right to. Because he knows I want nothing from him, Eloan said. It is the one way he may ask and be believed. If he came with an offer in his hand, I would shut the door, and he knows that too. So he comes with only the child. Her mother nodded slowly. Go then, go and see the little one. But Eloan. She stopped. I know what you would say, mother. Do you? That he is a duke, and I am a farmer's daughter, and I am to keep my head. I have kept it this long. I am not like to lose it over a cup of tea. But her mother had not been going to say that at all, and they both knew it. And neither of them said aloud the thing she had been going to say instead. The carriage came the next morning at 9, as the letter had promised. She wore her one good gown, brushed and mended at the cuff, and her mother's gray shawl, and she had washed her hair the night before and pinned it plain. She would not borrow finery. She did not own to walk into a house that would see through it in a moment. She went as what she was. Vale Court stood 2 miles beyond the village at the head of a long avenue of limes gone bare with the season. It was built of gray stone the color of a rain sky, older and larger and colder than any building Eloan had passed in her life. She had seen its chimneys once or twice above the trees. From the down, she had never thought to see its door. A servant took her at that door without a word, and led her through halls where her own footsteps rang too loud on the stone, past tall, dark portraits of dead Vales who all had the same gray eyes, past a staircase enough to drive a cart up. The air smelt of wood smoke and beeswax and old cold rooms. Eloan kept her chin level and her eyes ahead and did not let the house make her small. It was only stone, she told herself. Stone did not care who walked upon it, and neither then would she. They brought her to a room upstairs, where a fire was lit, and the curtains half drawn against the gray light. Sorrel was propped in a bed far too big for her, a rag doll under one arm and a picture book unopened on the coverlet, and when she saw who stood in the doorway, she gave a cry and held out both arms and would have climbed clean out of the bed had Eloan not crossed the room to catch her. You came. I told Papa you would come if he asked you properly, and did he ask me properly? Eloan said, settling on the edge of the bed with the child fast against her. Yes, he wrote it out 3 times. I saw the spoiled ones in the basket. Sorrel said this with great satisfaction, and Eloan kept her face still with some effort, and filed the thing away in her heart where she meant to keep it. The child was thinner than she should have been, with the shadow of the cold night still under her eyes, but she was warm, and she was safe, and now she chattered as though a stopper had come out of her. She showed Eloan the doll, whose name was Bess. She showed her the book, which had ships in it. She asked whether the horse Eloan had caught was hurt, and cried a little for fear it might be, and was comforted to learn it was not. Then, in the middle of all her chatter, the child grew quiet, and looked at her own hands, and said in a smaller voice, My mama died. Did you know that? I did know it, Eloan said gently. I was very sorry to hear it. She died when I was 5. I do not remember her very well anymore, and that is the worst part, Papa says. Only he did not say it to me, he said it to the window. But I heard. She turned the doll over in her hands. Papa does not talk. He is not cross, he is only quiet, all the time, like a house with the shutters up. But he talked to you. In the letter he talked. I read the spoiled ones. She looked up. Will you come again? After this? Not only the once. Eloan looked at the small, fierce face and did not make the child a promise she was unsure she could keep, because she had learned that a child knows a hollow promise the moment it is made. I will come as often as I am able, she said, and I will always tell you true when I cannot. Will that do?" Sorrel considered this with the gravity of a magistrate. "Yes," she decided, "that will do." Alone stayed the better part of the morning. She read the Book of Ships aloud, doing the voices of the sea captains low and gruff until the child laughed. And somewhere in the reading, she became aware that the door behind her had opened, and that the Duke of Vale stood just within it, where the child could not see him but she could, quite still, one shoulder to the frame, listening. She did not stop reading. She read to the end of the chapter, and by then the child's eyes had grown heavy, and the small head had found her shoulder, and Sorrel slept. Alowan closed the book, sat a moment more so as not to wake her, then eased her down into the bolster, drew up the coverlet, and rose. The Duke put a finger to his lips and tilted his head toward the corridor. She followed him out. He led her to a smaller room, warm and lined with books, where a fire burned and a tray of tea stood on a low table. He shut the door. "Sit," he said. "Please." And when she had sat, he did a thing she had not expected. He poured the tea himself with his own hand and gave her the cup, and did not ring for any servant to do it. The wound above his temple had closed to a dark line. It would leave a scar, she thought, a small one, and he would carry the night forever in it. "Your hands," he said, looking at the linen still bound about her palms. "Are they mending? Well enough, they will scar. It is no matter. They are working hands, not drawing-room hands, and a scar or two will not spoil them for the work." Something moved at the corner of his mouth that was not quite a smile. He let it go. "I did as you asked," he said then. "About the driver. His name is Bram Osler. He has driven for this house 11 years. The surgeon has set the leg, though it may not mend straight. He keeps his full wage and his cottage, and when he can no longer sit a box, which will be soon, for a man does not drive at 50 on a leg broken as badly as his, he will have the keeping of the stable-yard instead, and his wage will not fall by a penny. I did not do it because you told me to. I want you to understand that. I did it because you were right, and I had not thought of it, and I was ashamed I had not." "Thank you," Alowan said. "That was well done. It was the least done. Do not make more of it than it is." He set his own cup down untouched, and looked at the fire rather than at her. And when he spoke, it was lower now and more careful, as a man's does when he says a thing he has rehearsed and still does not much wish to say. "I owe you an apology, Miss Cade, that has nothing to do with the coach or the road. I have owed it 5 months, and I find I cannot sit in a room with you and drink your tea and not pay it. I wrote you a letter in the spring. It was a cold one, and I made it so on purpose, for I held coldness to be a kind of honesty, and honesty a kind of courtesy. I had been told you were a sensible girl of small means, and I reasoned you would see the arrangement for the fair bargain it was, and be glad of it. I wrote to you as I would write to a steward about the purchase of a field." "I remember the letter," Eloin said. "I do not doubt it." A muscle worked in his jaw. "When your refusal came, I was not angry. I would have you know that. For I think you have believed these 5 months that a duke refused must be an angry duke. I was not. I read your father's 3 correct lines, and underneath them I heard your own voice saying the thing plainly, and I understood that you had seen exactly what I was and wanted no part of it, and that you were right. I have been ashamed ever since. A man does not enjoy learning that a farmer's daughter has kept more honor in the matter of his marriage than he kept himself." Alowan held her cup and did not drink and did not speak, because she did not trust her voice to come steady. "I do not tell you this to reopen anything," he went on. "I gave my answer when I took yours. I will not offer to you again. I have no right to, and I would not insult you by it. You refused me, honestly, and I hold the refusal honest and closed. That is not what this is. Then what is it, Your Grace?" He looked at her at last. "Only that I find I would like to know you, not as the girl who saved my daughter, not as the girl who refused me, as yourself." I have sat in this house and listened to you read a book of ships to a child, and do the voices of sea captains, and I have not heard anything so alive within these walls since my wife died. I should like leave to write to you. Letters, and no more than letters. Answer them, or leave them, as you please. If you write back, I will write once more. If you do not, I will understand it, and I will not write a second time. And Sorrel's visits need not hang upon any of it. Take as long as you like to decide, now or in a week or never. Any answer is an answer, and I will abide by it. The fire cracked. The great cold house held its breath around them. I will think on it, Eloin said. That, said the Duke of Vale, is more than I hoped for. She thought on it 2 days, and on the third she wrote to him. She had meant the letter to be short, and it was short, but it was not cold. She wrote that she would be glad of his letters, and gladder to answer them, upon one condition plainly named, that neither of them should ever set down a word that was not true, for she had no use for the other kind and no time to waste upon it. She signed it Eloin Cade and sent it by the carrier. His reply came within 3 days and made her laugh aloud in the yard, which startled the hens. He had written not of himself, nor of her, but of a horse. There was a colted Viala black 2-year-old of very good blood and very bad opinions that had thrown 3 grooms, bitten a 4th, and would let no man near its offside. The head groom advised selling it for what it would fetch. He did not wish to sell it. It had been foaled the spring his wife died, and he had a foolish fondness for it he could not account for. Since Miss Cade appeared to understand horses better than any 4 men in his stable, might she tell him what was to be done with a creature that had decided the whole world was its enemy? Eloin wrote back the same evening. A horse that has decided the world is its enemy, she wrote, is most often a horse that was given good reason once by someone it trusted, and the only cure is time and a person who never lies to it. Begin on the side it will let you touch, and do not go to the other until it offers. Do not force the offside. Let the colt give it to you. A thing given is worth 10 things taken. She read the letter over before she sealed it, and thought she might have been writing of something other than a horse, and sealed it anyway. His next letter told her the near side was coming on. The one after said the colt had let him lay a hand on its shoulder. By the 4th, he had stopped pretending the letters were only about the horse, and so had she. She went to Vial again to see Sorrel, and this time the Duke asked stiffly, as though expecting refusal, whether she might look at the colt while she was there. She went out to the yard in her farm boots, with the child's hand in hers. The black colt laid its ears flat, and showed her the white of its eye, and she stood very still at the rail, and did not reach for it, and did not look at it straight, and talked to Sorrel of nothing at all in a low, even voice. And within the quarter hour, the colt had come to the rail of its own accord to learn who wanted nothing of it. "How do you do that?" Sorrel demanded. "I do not do anything. That is the whole trick of it. Most people cannot bear to do nothing. Horses can always tell." She looked up and found the Duke watching her across the yard, not the colt, her watching the way she had just been, not watching the colt, careful and sidelong as though she too might startle and bolt if he looked at her too straight. She held his eyes a moment across the cold air. Then the colt lipped at her sleeve, and she turned back to it, and the moment let her go. So the autumn went, and the winter came on, and the letters came weekly, then twice weekly, and Eloin told no one at home how many there were, nor how she had begun to count the days to the carrier. Then, a little before Christmas, the blow that had been coming all along fell at last. A man named Sedley, land agent to the absentee lord, who held the ground the Cade farm stood on, rode into the yard one gray morning and left a paper. The lease was called in. The arrears her father had let run in. The bad years were demanded in full by Lady Day. The family would quit the farm and the land be let to another. It was no more than the law allowed. It was also ruin. Her father read the paper and sat down and did not speak, Her mother read it and put her hand to her mouth. Elowen read it last, and the first thing she felt, to her shame, was the pull of the easy road, the memory of a gray-eyed man, saying, "The lease can be lifted by noon if you wish it." She folded the paper and gave it back to her father. "We will find another way," she said. "I will not write to Vielle for it. Do you hear me? Not that, anything but that." "Lowen," her father began. "If I go to him with my hand out, then I am what his sort has always taken me for, and every word I have said to him turns to a lie behind me. I would rather quit the farm honest than keep it as a kept thing. We will find another way." Her father studied her a long time. He did not believe there was another way, but he had learned, twice now, the weight of that voice, and he did not argue with it. She did not tell the Duke of the lease. She wrote to him that week of the frost on the down, a fox that had taken 2 hens, and how the black colt might now be leading if he had done as she said, and not one word of Sedley or Lady Day or the paper in her father's box. It was the first untrue thing that had ever passed between them, untrue only by silence, and it sat in her chest like a swallowed stone. She saw him twice more before the year turned, each time to see sorrel, each time with him at the edge of it, watching, keeping a careful distance, never stepping across it. Each time she rode home through the early dark and felt the want of something she would not name, for naming it could not be afforded, not by a girl with a called-in lease and a duke's letters hidden beneath her mattress. He was Vielle, she was Cade. He had given his word not to ask again, and was too proud and too honest to break it. So whatever this was, it could go no further than a black colt, and a book of ships and a stone swallowed and carried. She had known that from the start, and let it happen. Anyway, it was Sorrel who let the shadow fall. On Elowen's last visit before Christmas, the child said, swinging her feet, "Aunt Verena is coming for the new year. She is Papa's sister, and she is very grand, and she never laughs. She comes to look us over." Sorrel wrinkled her nose. "She calls it looking after us. Papa calls it the inspection. After she is gone, I am to have a clean pinafore and say little." Elowen said nothing, but something in her went still and cold, the way the yard had gone still before ever she heard the coach, and she understood without being told that she herself was one of the things Lady Verena was coming to look over. Lady Verena came to Vielle Court on the 2nd day of the new year, and on the 4th a note came to the Cade farm. It was not from the Duke. It was written in a tall, thin, downward hand, and it did not ask. It summoned. Lady Verena presented her compliments to Miss Cade, and desired that Miss Cade take tea with her at Vielle Court on Thursday at 3. A carriage would be sent. There was no room made in it for no. Elowen's mother read the note, and her lips went white. "You need not go. I will go. Elowen, she means to frighten you." "I know she does," Elowen said, folding the note. "And I would rather be frightened sitting upright with a teacup in my hand than hide in this house and let her think she managed it from 2 miles off. I will go, and I will drink her tea, and I will come home again. Do not wait supper anxious." She went on the Thursday. She was not shown to the warm, book-lined room where the Duke had poured her tea with his own hand. She was shown to a great, cold drawing-room, done all in blue and gold, where a fire had been lit that did not warm it, and where Lady Verena sat very upright in a chair by the window and did not rise when Elowen came in. She was a handsome woman of perhaps 45, tall and spare, with the same gray veil eyes as her brother, only where his had gone the color of a winter river, hers had the temper of a drawn blade. She looked Elowen over once, slowly from mended cuff to plain pinned hair, in the manner of a woman pricing a horse she has no intention of buying. "Sit, Miss Cade." Elowen sat. "Tea. Thank you," Lady Verena poured. Her hand was perfectly steady. She gave Elowen the cup, sat back and studied her over the rim of her own. "So, you are the girl who stopped the coach. I am. And the girl who refused my brother, I am that too. The two together make quite a story. A duke plucked from the pit by the very farm girl who spurned his hand. It wants only a ballad. She set down her cup. I did not ask you here to praise you, Miss Cade. I asked you here because I am the one person in this family who will tell you the truth, and I hold that an unkindness done early is a kindness in the end. My brother writes to you. Do not trouble to deny it. The servants' hall knows it, and what the servants' hall knows, the county knows by Sunday. He writes to a farmer's daughter every week, and has since the autumn, and he has not written so many letters to any living soul since his wife was laid in the ground. I am not a fool, and I will not insult you by supposing you one. So I shall be plain. My brother is a duke, the 8th of his line. He has a daughter who will want a great match made for her one day, and that match will hang upon the name her father keeps clean. He may marry where he likes, that is the privilege of dukes, but he may not marry where he likes without cost, and the cost of marrying you would be paid not by him, but by that child upstairs, for the whole of her life. A duchess who is a farmer's daughter is a scandal in this generation and a stain upon the next. You would not rise to him, Miss Cade, whatever the ballad says. He would sink to you and drag his daughter down after him. She let that sit. I have watched my brother grieve 3 years, she went on more quietly. I have watched him refuse every suitable woman in 3 counties. And now he fixes upon the one wholly unsuitable creature within reach, because she is novel and because she wants nothing from him, and a man asked for things all his life will always mistake, being asked for nothing for love. It is not love, it is relief. And when the novelty is spent, you will be left a duchess whom no drawing-room will receive, in a house full of people who despise you, and he will be left knowing what it cost his child. I tell you this to spare all 3 of you. And the correspondence. Refuse the next visit. You have the trick of it already. Refuse the rest and go marry some honest man of your own kind, and let this house alone. She reached to a small table at her elbow where a folded paper lay ready. And because I am not a monster, I will not ask you to be ruined for your good sense. There's provision here, £200, settled on you the day my brother's letters go unanswered. A dowry, a shop, a passage to wherever you would begin again. I will not haggle, and I will not offer it twice. It is the kindest thing anyone in this family is likely to do for you, and you would be wise to take it. The fire that did not warm the room ticked in the grate. Eloan looked down into her tea. Then she set the cup very carefully in its saucer and looked up. May I ask you one thing, Lady Verena, before I answer you? You may ask. When you were married, Eloan watched the older woman's face and saw it do nothing which told her a great deal. Did anyone sit you down as you have sat me down and tell you the truth early, for a kindness? Or were you simply told the match was made, and the settlements drawn, and the day fixed, and your part in it was to wear the gown and say the word? For the first time Lady Verena was silent. I ask, Eloan went on, evenly, because you speak of cost, and of what a marriage takes from a child, and you speak of it as one who knows. And I think you do know. I think you were married, very properly, to a very suitable man at the wish of a very careful family, and I think it cost you something no drawing-room ever saw, and that you have carried it so long you have taught yourself to call it wisdom. I am sorry for it, if it is so, truly. But I will not take it as counsel. You say I want nothing from your brother. You are right, and you do not know how right. 3 weeks ago, the lease on my father's farm was called in. We are to be turned out at Lady Day for arrears we cannot pay. Your brother offered, in the autumn, to lift that lease with a single word, and I refused him, and I have not told him it is called in, and I will not tell him, because I would sooner lose the only home I have known than have 1 penny of Vale pay for it. That is how little I want from your brother, my lady. I am walking toward ruin rather than ask him for the very thing you accuse me of scheming after. And now you slide a paper across a table and name a price for my going, as though the whole difference between me and the woman you take me for were only that no one had yet bid high enough. Eloan's voice did not rise. She had never in her life needed it to. Keep your 200 pounds. I have refused a fortune from this family once already, and I find the second refusal comes even easier than the first. The blue and gold room was very quiet. So you may keep your warning as well, Eloan said, and she rose and set her cup upon the tray. I did not seek your brother. I did not seek his letters. I have promised him nothing and asked him for less. If he writes to me, I will read it, for I am a grown woman, and the reading of my own letters is mine to decide and not yours. And if ever the day comes that he asks me anything, which he has given me his word he will not, then my answer will be mine to give, in my own mouth, and not yours to give from me from a cold room 2 miles off. Thank you for the tea. Lady Verena, I can find the door. She walked the length of that great blue room with her back straight and her head level, and did not let the shaking of her knees climb as high as her shoulders, and did not once look back. Behind her, Lady Verena said nothing, did not call her back, did not dismiss her, did not speak. The silence followed her out into the ringing stone hall and down the long, cold corridor, and did not let her go until the great door had shut behind her and she stood gulping the raw January air like a woman come up from under water. She had won the room. She knew it even then. She had said every true thing and left none unsaid, and the grand, cold woman had had no answer to give her. She did not yet understand that, in winning the room, she might have lost everything beyond it. For Lady Verena was not a woman who forgave being bested, and she was, that very hour, already climbing the stair to the room where her brother sat, to tell him, in her own careful words, exactly what his farmer's daughter was, and what it would cost his child, and what he must now do. He did not write. The carrier's day came, and Eloan found some reason to be in the yard when he passed, and there was nothing for the Cade farm. She told herself the roads were foul with January mud. The next carrier's day came and passed, and nothing. She told herself a great house at New Year was full of company, and a man had many calls upon him. The third week there was nothing, and she stopped telling herself things. She knew what had happened as surely as if she had stood in the room. Lady Verena had gone to him. Lady Verena had said her careful piece, and whether he had been persuaded his sister was right, or had only been reminded of the word he had given, never to ask again, and resolved to keep it now by silence. The end was the same for Eloan either way. The letters had stopped, and the small, warm, impossible thing that had lived inside them was over. She went to Marl Cross on a gray afternoon near the end of the month, though she had no errand there. She had not been back to the Crossroads since the night of the coach. The broken milestone still lay where the wheel had struck it, split clean into 2 halves in the frozen grass, and no one had troubled to set it up again. Eloan sat down on the larger half with her cloak drawn close against the wind and looked at the 4 empty roads. She had done right. She was as sure of that as she had ever been of anything. She had told Lady Verena nothing but the truth, and would tell it again tomorrow, if asked. She had defended her own worth and her right to read her own letters, and would not take back one word. And it had cost her everything, and the cost sat in her chest now like the January cold, heavy and gray, and settled into stay. The lease would fall at Lady Day. The letters would not come again. She would quit the farm honest and become some other thing, and in 10 years the whole of it, the coach, the colt, the book of ships, the gray eyes across the cold yard, would seem a strange, bright dream some tired girl had once had beside a crossroads. She was 19. She felt 100. She sat until the cold came up through the stone and into her, and the light began to go, and then she made herself rise to start for home. And then, far off down the Ashbourne road, she heard it, hooves, a single horse coming fast, and something in the sound of it made her turn. It was the Duke. He came down the Ashbourne Road on a tall, gray horse, riding hard and alone, greatcoat open, dark hair wild. He saw her by the broken milestone and pulled the gray up so short it threw its head, and was down out of the saddle before it had fairly stopped. Miss Cade, he was out of breath, a duke out of breath, in a public road. They told me at your farm you had walked out toward the cross. I have been 3 days trying to. He stopped himself, and made himself be still. Forgive me. Let me say it in order. You have not written, Eloan said. She had not meant it to come out as it did low and bare. 3 weeks and not a word. No, I have not written. His jaw worked. My sister came to me the day she took her tea with you. She told me what she had said to you, and what you answered. Something, almost a smile, crossed his hard face. She meant it as a warning of what a dangerous, impertinent, unsuitable creature you were. She has never in her life given me a better reason to. He shut his mouth on the word. And I did not write, he said instead, because I dared not write only what a wiser man would have written, would not send you a letter that pretended nothing had changed when everything had. And I had given you my word I would not offer again, and could not see how to keep it and write to you honestly in the same week. So I kept it by silence. That was cowardice, dressed as honor, and I am ashamed of it, and it is the last cowardice I mean ever to bring you. You gave me your word. Eloan said slowly, I did. Not to ask you again, and I have not. He looked at her steadily. I am not here to break it, Miss Cade. I would have you understand that before anything else. I did not ride out to ask you for anything. I came to tell you 3 things that are true, and then leave you in peace with them, because you of all people have the right to hear the truth from my own mouth, and not have it kept from you for your own good by others who fancy they know it better than you. Then tell me your 3 things. He drew a breath. The wind pulled at his coat, the gray cropped the verge. The first, I know the lease on your farm is called in. No, as she started, you did not tell me. You would sooner have died than tell me, and I honor it, and that is half the trouble with you. Sedley's master banks with my own man of business, and such things are known. I have not paid it. I have not lifted it. I have not sent a penny to your father, though it has been the hardest thing I ever did not do, because I know what it would make of me to you, and I would sooner lose you than be that to you. The lease stands exactly as it stood. You knew, Eloan said. All these weeks you knew and said nothing, and sent nothing. It was the hardest silence I ever kept. Every week I did not write. I also did not send the quiet word that would have ended the whole matter by nightfall. I sat on my hands like a man sitting on a fire, 'cause you asked it. I want you to know what your one refusal has been worth to me, so that you never doubt I heard you. The second true thing, my sister is right about the cost. I will not stand here and lie to win you. There has been too much of that in my life already. She is right that the county will talk, that a duchess raised on a farm will be slighted in rooms she has every right to stand in, and that some of that will fall upon Sorrel, and I cannot wholly prevent it. But in every other thing she is wrong, about who you are and what you are worth, and what my daughter truly needs, which is not a spotless name half so much as one person in the world who will never lie to her. The cost is real, and you must know it, for I will not have you come to me not knowing. And the third, Eloan said. Her voice was not steady now. He was quiet a moment. When he spoke, it was very low. The third is only this. I have written you 41 letters since the autumn, and kept every letter you wrote me back. They are in a drawer in the room where I poured your tea, and I have read some so often the folds are gone soft. 3 weeks ago they stopped, because I was too much a coward to begin them again. And these have been the longest 3 weeks I have known since my wife died. I did not understand, until they stopped, what they were to me. I understand it now. That is the third true thing, and the last, and I have no right to do anything with it but carry it home, and let you be. He stopped, He looked at her, then at the ground, and reached for the gray's rein. "That is all I came to say. I will not trouble you further." "Good. You have kept your word," Iloan said. He stopped, the rein in his hand. "You have not asked me anything," she said. "You have kept your word most faithfully. So it falls to me." Her heart beat so hard she thought the wind must carry the sound of it to him. "I release you from it. Do you hear me? I give it back. The word you gave, not to ask, I return it to you. It is yours again, to do with as you please." The Duke of Vielle went entirely still. "Iloan," he said. It was the first time he had ever spoken her name. "Be very sure. Do not be kind to me. Be true. If you bid me ask, I will ask, and I will not be able to unask it, and neither of us will be as we were. I have never in my life said a thing I was not sure of." She said, "You know that better than most. Ask me." He crossed the frozen road between them, not sweeping, but slowly as a man walks who cannot quite trust the ground to hold, and stopped an arm's length from her, nearer than he had ever let himself come. "Iloan Cade, will you marry me?" And then, because he was who he was, and because he knew her, he did not stop there. "Not to save your farm the lease stands, and I will not touch it. And if you marry me, you do it knowing the farm may still fall, for I will not buy you with it. Not to give my daughter a mother, though she loves you, and I will not pretend that nothing. Not because you drew me from a pit, for you have forbidden me that debt, and I have given over trying. None of those." His voice was not quite steady, and he was a man whose voice was always steady. "I ask because I have kept a drawer full of your letters, and would rather sit across a table from you and be told a hard truth than be flattered by every soul in 3 counties. And because when your letters stopped, the world went quiet in the one way I cannot bear, having borne it once. I ask you for myself, and nothing else. You may say no a second time, and I will honor it as I honored the first. But I found I had to ask." The wind went over the 4 roads. Loan looked at him, at the wild hair and open coat and the scar she had bound with her own linen, at the proud, hard, careful man standing in a public road with his heart in his open hand, and thought of the spring letter she had refused, and did not repent it. For the man who had written that letter could never have stood where this man stood now. "Yes," she said. He did not move. "Yes? Yes. Not the answer I gave in the spring, this one. Yes, I will marry you for yourself and for nothing else," and knowing the whole of the cost, her eyes had filled, and she let them, and did not count crying weak. Not now. Not for this. "Yes, Corin." At the sound of his own name in her mouth, something broke and eased in his face, some 3 years' winter going out of it. He closed the last of the distance. He did not sweep her up, and he did not kiss her. He took both her hands, her working hand, her scarred hands, the palms she had opened on his horse's head. Stahl turned them over and looked at the marks, and raised them to his mouth and pressed his lips to them, first one, then the other, as though they were the finest things in the county, which by then, to him, they were. For a while neither spoke. The gray blew and shifted. Across the down a church bell told the hour, thin on the wind. "The farm may still fall," he said against her hair, as though he needed her to have heard it plainly once more. "I meant it. I will not lift the lease. I will not have you ever able to say I bought you." "Let it fall, then," Iloan said, surprised to find she meant it wholly. "It is walls and a roof. All my life I have been told the walls were the thing that I must marry to keep them, be sold to save them. I am done with it. If we lose the farm, we lose it, and my father may keep his pride and I mine, and we will manage, as we always have." She turned her head against his shoulder. "Though I will tell you now, Corin, and only the once, I mean to go on with the horses. I did not stop your coach to become an ornament in a cold blue room. If I am to be a duchess, I will be one with mud on my hem and my hands in a colt's mane, and your sister may faint if she chooses." She felt, rather than heard him laugh. a strange rusty thing, as though the works of it had gone long unused. "I would not have you any other way," he said. "I did not fall in love with an ornament. There was never any ornament. That was rather the whole of it." He set her up on the gray and swung up behind her, and drew his open coat around them both, and the horse carried them back down the Ashbourne Road in the last gray light, and neither said one word the whole way, and Eloan thought she had never been so cold in her body and so warm in her chest at the very same time. They were married in the spring in the small gray church at Whitcombe, a year almost to the day since the cold letter had come. The church had never held so many, come for love of the story, or to sniff at a duke marrying a farmer's girl, or both. Eloan's mother wept from the first word to the last. Her father, who had shouted the house down a year before over a refused fortune, stood at the front in a new coat and gave his daughter's hand into the duke's with a steadiness that cost him all he had. Sorrel carried the ring with such ferocious gravity that she forgot to be shy of the crowd, dropped it only once, recovered it from a crack in the flags with the air of one who had meant to, and did not smile, because smiling was not solemn. Lady Verena came. No one had been sure she would. She sat in the second pew in dark plum silk, upright as a drawn blade, and gave nothing away. Eloan had made her peace beforehand with whatever the woman chose to be, and decided it would not touch her, yet she felt the gray vile eyes on her back through every vow, could not read them, and did not try. At the wedding breakfast after, in the great hall at Vielle where the fires had for once been built high enough to warm it, Lady Verena came to her, a wine-glass in her hand. "Duchess." "Lady Verena, I said a great many things to you in that blue drawing-room. So you did. I do not withdraw them." The gray eyes were steady. Every word was true. The county will talk. The doors will be hard. Some of it will fall upon the child. I told you no lie. "I never thought you did." Eloan said no. Something shifted in the older woman's face. Not warmth, for Eloan did not think she had much warmth to give, but something. "I was right in all of it but one thing," Lady Verena said, "and the one thing was the whole of it. I was wrong about what you are. I took you for a girl grown above herself by luck at a crossroads. You are not that. My brother has not laughed since Cecily died. He laughed twice at that altar this morning. I find I can forgive a great deal of scandal for the sound of it." She raised her glass a bare inch. "Welcome to the family, Duchess. You will find me a hard woman. You will not find me a false one." She drank, inclined her head, walked away, and never spoke of it again. But when, months later, a baroness thought to amuse a London dinner table at the new duchess's expense, it was Lady Verena who cut her off with a remark so quiet and cold that the baroness left before the fish was cleared, and the whole table understood whose side the family stood upon. That was her way, and Eloan learned to be glad of it. The Cade farm fell at Lady Day, as it had always meant to. The Duke never lifted a hand to it. Eloan never asked him to, and they let it go between them without a word. But her father did not go to the workhouse. He came to Vale, where the stables had long wanted a true horseman, and took the running of the stud. The black colt that had trusted no one learned to trust him, and within the 12-month the Vale horses were spoken of at 3 fairs, and old Cade held his head higher than ever, for now it was his work that kept him, not a landlord's mercy. There was one thing more, learned by chance near the end of that first year. Bram Osler's leg had knit crooked, as she had known it would, and he could no longer sit a coach box. But he kept the stable yard now as promised, and his wife Nan did the fine sewing for the house. It was Nan who told her one afternoon in the still room, not knowing she told a secret, supposing the Duchess must surely already know. "It is thanks to His Grace," of course Nan said comfortably, over the mending. "Our Alice, at the school in Ashbourne, learning her letters and figures alongside the attorney's girls and the doctor's, and her but a coachman's daughter. He arranged it the winter Bram was hurt, paid the schooling, the boarding, the books, and made us give our word we'd not speak of it. Said it was no charity, only what was owed, though to whom I never could make out. He'll not have it mentioned to this day. Eloan sat very still, a half-darned stocking in her lap. She had not known. She thought of the man who had once written to her as though she were a field to be bought, and of that same man quietly setting a coachman's daughter among the attorney's children, swearing the family to silence, so no credit could find its way back to him. He had told no one, least of all her who would have loved him for it, for to tell her would have been to spend it, and he had not done it to be spent. She did not go to him with it. She carried it a week. Then one evening by the fire, Sorrel asleep above them in spring rain on the tall windows, she said only, "Alice Osler, at the school in Ashbourne." He did not look up from his book. "What of her?" "Nothing," Eloan said. "Only that I know, and that I think I know now what manner of man I married, not the one the county believes it knows, the other one." He turned another page and did not answer, but his free hand came across the space between their chairs and found hers and held it, and they sat so a long while and said nothing more, which had become their way. Sorrel grew strong and tall. The shadow the coach had left lifted with the year, and she learned to ride, badly at first, then very well, and laughed as freely as any child in the county, which the servants said they had never thought to hear. One evening in the second spring, running in from the garden with her hands full of the first primroses, she called, "Mama, look," across the room before she had thought what she said. Then she stopped, the flowers half spilling, suddenly uncertain. Eloan made nothing of it. She did not weep over the child, nor press her, nor let her face change by more than a smile. She only said, "They are the finest I have seen this year. Put them in water before they wilt." And the child's face cleared, and she ran to do it, and it was never spoken of, and Sorrel never called her by any other name again. And sometimes, riding to visit her mother, or out to a far tenant, Eloan would come by way of Marl Cross. Someone had set the broken milestone upright again at last, mended with an iron band. She would rein in a moment, in the wind and the crying of the rooks, at the place where she had once stood with a sack of flour and heard a sound come wrong out of the east. She thought sometimes how small a thing had turned her whole life, that she had gone that day for flour and not the day before, that she had stood at the cross and not a furlong up the lane. Any smaller chance, and she would have carried her flour home and never known what she had missed. She had said no to a letter once and yes to a man at a crossroads, and it had taken her a long while to understand that the two had never been opposite things at all. They were the same word, said twice to the same purpose. No to being bought, yes to being seen. She had only ever wanted the one thing from the very beginning, to be known plainly and wholly by someone who wanted nothing of her but that she be herself. She had it now. She would turn the grey for home, and the smoke would be rising from the chimneys of Vale above the bare limes, and he would be at the door when she came, not because a duke must meet a duchess, but because he had heard the horse upon the road, and had chosen, as he chose every day, to be there when she came in. She had gone out one grey afternoon for a sack of flour. She had come home, by a road no one could have drawn beforehand, to exactly this. It was enough. It was everything, and it was hers.